What's going on, everybody? This is Mike, and we're back with another show. This is more of a special podcast, but a lot of news in games this last week or two, and so have some topics to cover, anywhere from Activision to possibly some of the Nintendo Microsoft stuff. We'll see where the conversation goes, but was talking to GameTradeGregg on Twitter, which we do every now and then, and thought it'd be awesome to have him on the show. So, Gregg, go ahead, maybe introduce yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, thanks for having me, of course. And it's us Midwest boys got to stick together. I own my own video game store. I worked actually at GameStop for 11 years before opening my own game store. So I've been selling video games in the retail space for about 20 years almost, like damn near 20 years. And it's hard to believe. But so that's kind of my take. And I've always had this sort of like, I've always been fascinated with every facet of it. So not only because I own my own business, right? But like I love the business side of it. And when you had the idea to do like, let's talk like business numbers, let's talk like, let's do it. And like you fully admit, on Twitter, like in your limited amount of wordage you have, sometimes things come off a little harsher, a little sharper.
Yeah.
But you and I agree quite a bit on some of the like ridiculousness of certain things, like certain fans or the outrage of certain things and like the way a story turns. And so I love the fact that we're going to be able to like crunch a bunch of topics on that. And I've always kind of liked the business aspect of it. And I think we can both cover that since we're both into that. There's no hyperbole here. Like this isn't going to be, we're not reading a headline and then just regurgitating that. I think we'll be able to dissect it. And it makes me very excited to see what we can come up with.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah. And you hit on a little bit, and maybe even because, maybe this drops on one of your channels, we'll see. But, that's kind of exactly it. So my background a little bit, because I don't even know if I've said this on the show, but, for the last, 15 years, I've really worked in either web app development or software development. And I've been pretty close, no video game stuff. And this is where it's going to be fun for us because you have a lot more background in that video game industry that I don't have. But I have a lot of insight into things like reductions and numbers and budgets and how they get set. And I know you do too as well. And I think that, like you said, there's always these things that come up and people will read a headline or hear a snippet of audio and they'll just run with it. And that's kind of the thing. And I got to give you kudos because the one thing when I listen to your shows, and you did this specifically with the Activision story, was you always lay a very nice groundwork for what you're going to talk about. And you ran with some of the quotes from Jason Schreier's story and some other things. And then you lay the opinion out there, and it's never just this, hey, there's a headline and now I'm going to react to it and scream. And I think that's always what I've appreciated about the stuff that you do. And then secondly, it's always easier to have the conversation rather than just what's on Twitter, because on Twitter I'll go after things because I'm arguing with Twitter in a lot of ways. And it's always like, it's almost like, and I hate to say this because it's almost an indictment on my Twitter presence, but I'm almost a caricature of myself in a lot of ways because I'm only taking just this loud aspect of it because I get so passionate about such a microcosm of an entire story being discussed, and it kind of irritates me. And so I think that's where today we can have some good conversation.
Well, and Twitter's known for its brevity. Like it was never designed to be like lay out all your feelings in a well thought out post. It's like you have a limited amount of time to get your point across. People on Twitter then have a shortened attention span because they're used to writing and reading in shorter attention spans. Yeah. So it's like a rapid fire, like how quickly can I get my point out but not sound like a complete idiot? And then make sure you don't misspell anything because you can't edit it. I've given up on the spelling stuff. I know that you've seen that where anytime somebody points out a typo, I'm just like, it's Twitter, guys. I don't care enough. It's Twitter. I just type it out. If you know what I mean, that's good enough. But that's always the argument of like, hey, you misspelled it. Half the time I'm using like voice to text or something. And I read it and I'm like, that's good enough. Send.
but it's neither here nor there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the argument of someone who has no argument back is to attack your grammar.
Look at your
attack
grammar.
Whatever,
Yeah, I know. It's always funny. So anyway, Activision happened this week. And so a lot of layoffs. I don't know I'm not recalling the final number, but I think it was somewhere to 8 to 10% is what it sounded like. Does that sound correct? Yeah.
Yeah, and over 800.
Yeah, it was a huge number. I mean, earlier in the week, they were talking over 100, and then it was a big chunk of the staff, right? And that's and that's unfortunate, right? We've talked about that, but the immediate. So where the outrage happened, because this was one of those things where we saw it coming. We knew for a while that there was going to be cuts. I mean, even for the last couple weeks, there was rumors about it. But man, I think it was it Thursday or Friday that the investor call happened, and they opened up the investor call talking about revenue and record revenue. And boy, did the internet lose their mind. And granted, I agree it's not a great look, but this was my biggest point is like revenue's not the only metric, and it's an investor call. And like, if you screw up an investor call, right? If you open up your investor call with doom and gloom and you're not running towards, those are the people that own, assets in the company and shares in the company. Like, you can't piss those off, or you're going to close that investor call, and then you're really going to see stocks die. Right. And so like, that was my biggest thing of like, holy crap, the internet just reacted to one microcosm of like this larger business strategy and just lost it, Well, and you had this moment where they basically were saying, we missed our expectations. We underperformed. Like, and it was funny. You can see some of the quotes when you're reading the articles. The quote was there. It was quoted, and it was saying something like, we had a record breaking year, and that's what they highlight, right? But the very next line is something like how we missed projections, and we over whatever. And so that is in the pictures that they're showing, but it's not the highlighted blue bar. So everyone misses that. And so basically, like you're saying, on an investor call, it's kind of like the old manager adage, it's like a compliment sandwich, right? Like, you kind of start with something positive, then you give the doom and gloom, and then you leave with something positive. And so the part of that they had to be like their positive side was what people were killing them over. Like you're killing a business for trying to look forward to the future and for trying to find a little glint of positivity in what overall was a negative quarter. And so you're looking at it like, what, like, yes, they said these things, but it's the one thing they had to say to turn around what entirely was a complete mess of a quarter for them, which again, yes, they made record revenue for that quarter, and it's like, holy crap, but not to them, not when they set a bar and they didn't reach that bar. And yeah, we could argue all day, like how stupid the stock market is and stock prices fluctuating based off of like, just, Elon Musk tweeting out about something, dropping stock prices, him getting, all that stuff. It is like legalized gambling. It's whatever, the stock market's a wild place. Yep.
But this is how it works. And then to say that, what's really been bugging me, and this kind of, we're going to go all over the place, but what's really been bugging me is
this isn't structured, so it's going to be just a lot of stream of conscious here, because I'm super excited to have the conversation with somebody. So just take it wherever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to blow smoke, but I've always envisioned like having this conversation with somebody who like is on the level. I speak to a lot of people that like in different stages of gaming knowledge, and just business knowledge in general. So it's nice to have like somebody else who gets it,
Right.
And what I've been seeing the most is really, really bothering me is when people are sharing when Satoru Iwata cut his pay in half because of poor fiscal results due to the Wii U.
Yep.
So like, and I see that and they go, this is how you run a company. And it's like, you're not taking into account completely different cultures. You're not taking into account the amount of money, which wasn't even like close to the same. And so it just, and again, that was like, it's a theme, and someone shares it, and then people just see that and go, because I understand it, right? It's like the sniff test. Like when you see that Activision makes a bunch of revenue, has record sharing revenue, and then lays off 800 people, your sniffer's like, something stinks about this,
yep.
But it's like, that's when you as a human have to be like, okay, let's look into it more. let's go a little further.
And I'm glad you brought up the Nintendo piece, right? Because I don't want to go too hard into other personalities on the internet, because I think we know a lot of this also is, hey, you're going to placate to what gets you, listens and clicks and things like that. And that's totally fine. I get that. But, I saw Jim Sterling post that Iwata stuff last night. Now, I don't know when he posted it. And it had struck a nerve with me again, because, and I'm at the risk of sounding hypocritical, there is this broad brush that it seems like industry professionals paint every scenario with. And in the case of Nintendo and leadership taking a pay cut to keep people around potentially, right? That might have been in Nintendo's best interest at that time, right? The Nintendo story could have been, and none of us will already know, but for the sake of conversation, let me throw this out there. The Nintendo conversation could have been, we didn't hit numbers. We're already operating lean. And if we let these people go, we're going to be in a really, really bad spot. And leadership said, you know what? We have a short-term solution for that. We've got a strategy that should put us in a better position 6 to 9 months from now. We cannot afford to actually take this hit right now. Leadership's going to go ahead and take this hit, and we're going to be okay, right? Like that maybe worked for Nintendo. In Activision's case, and you brought this up on your show, everybody was like, look at the CTO's page, it's $28 million, and you go, yeah, that's a ton of money. But he could have, in Activision's case, he could have taken $1, and I guarantee you they still make those cuts. Because it wasn't heavily development focused. It was admin, it was HR, it was esports, a lot of things that we would probably all agree that the esports thing probably fizzled out. And I don't think anyone wanted to see publishers in esports, right? That just seemed like a huge conflict of interest. And then, it's not my place to sit here and comment where they were running fat and where they were running lean when it comes from an administrative standpoint. Now, to your point, and you hit on this, and you can maybe discuss this a little more, but yeah, when you cut people, you're going to put roles and responsibilities on people's laps that are now maybe going to be overworked, don't know how to do the job, so on and so forth. But that's a risk a company is going to take, probably regardless of what the CEO is getting paid. That's a business decision. You know where I'm coming from?
Right. And that's the environment we live in. Like you play the hand you're dealt, I guess is the best way to say it. So this is how the corporate structure works. And look, you want to know what happens to investor calls and in profit margins when you announce that you can't find a CEO?
Yeah.
I mean, look at GameStop right now. GameStop's on like their third or fourth CEO. And the guy whose current CEO was appointed because the other guy quit after a month, that sent shares tumbling.
Yeah.
So now imagine you do that. You can't get a decent CEO. And so your shares are tumbling. And then you're trying to explain to shareholders, where you're going to get your money from. And it's like, well, we got to run lean. So you got to cut people. So now you're cutting people because you don't have a CEO that is good for the company. And so now, again, we could argue all day, like, is that really messed up? Like, yeah, that's pretty messed up. Is that one person's vision really driving the entire company? Yeah, you could argue like the points of a CEO and like how important they are. And I think there's amazing ones that have changed businesses forever. And I think there's like garbage ones that just were plugged into a socket and they did a bad job and then they leave and they take their money. But that's how it works. And so you go after a high ranking CEO, like a almost like a celebrity almost at that point in the business circle. And
yeah, they really are. I mean, they really are.
And they hop company to company, and you kind of see that a lot. Rarely do you see people staying at companies like with the recent Sony shakeup last week. It was like to see that the guy they're putting ahead of the PlayStation division now is like a guy that's been at Sony since '94. You're like, that's crazy. Like that's so uncommon. And so, yeah. And, so it's like if you don't have a CEO that makes a ton of money and that you trust and that is doing what's right for your company, you're also getting dinged on stocks. And then you have to also placate to the stockholders. And I said this on my podcast, but it's one thing I noticed right away. Like I worked at GameStop when it was a private company, and I worked there when they became publicly traded. And I saw that whole transition, and it was awful. Like they went from doing what they thought was right to make money as a company to doing what they thought was right to make shareholders want to buy their stocks.
Yeah,
and those things are not always the same.
Well,
very rarely are they the same.
Yeah, and that's the tough. But this is, and I don't. And again, I'm not trying to justify the absurd amount of money some CEOs make, but we are talking about global companies here that also have the revenue that goes along with that, and the margins and all. I mean, they're dealing with a lot of cash, and again, we can argue one way or the other. But your point there, I think, is well taken. The problem is, it's a very fine line, right? Because the CEO is kind of in a lot of ways working for the investors, board members, so on and so forth, right? But they also have this balance of needing to do right by the customers, because if you're just, I mean, we've seen it before. If you're just trying to do right by the investors, that has the potential to backfire very quickly, and you know, you know, and you've seen it firsthand, right?
Yeah, and actually, when GameStop bought EB Games always paid their employees better. They got commissions, they got spiffs. Like EB Games employees, when they transitioned to GameStop, they got to keep their pay. There were assistant managers making more at EB making more than GameStop managers were making. Yeah, it was a mess. It was really bad. Actually, it was one of the sloppiest mergers I've ever seen. Not that I've seen very many, but you know, well, based off my information.
It's funny. So let me throw this in here, because I think some of this conversation relates to the scenario I just found myself in. So yeah, I was recently laid off. And the long story short of it, the company that I work for, and I'm not going to give any too crazy details, just, you know, given how sporadic I can be online, but, I worked for a software acquisition company, or an equity firm that acquired software development companies. And they had the equity firm acquired, I think it was somewhere in the lines of 20 to 25 software development companies in a variety of different industries. And if you would look at, so the company I worked for was responsible for essentially media, news media, software applications. And that industry alone is a $200 billion industry. But if you look at the equity firm as a whole, and I don't want to give too many specifics, but it would be a top 5 software application development company from an equity standpoint in the world. And so their role in acquiring companies was always to acquire the company. And this maybe is similar to what Activision and Blizzard, their relationship kind of looks like, but this equity firm would come in, they'd acquire a company, and depending on where the company was strong or weak, they would do a gap analysis and go, the company is really weak here, so we're going to let them continue to have autonomy over the stuff that they're good at. But now we're going to roll our industry best practices in to the things that we're bad at. And we need reports quarterly back to the board on how progress is going on those things that you're not doing well. And so with Activision and Blizzard, and again, you hit on this a little bit on your podcast, was that there was this time where Blizzard was really, I mean, they had a lot of clout in the industry, and they were always hitting numbers, and they were doing a ton of good work. And it seems like the minute they slipped up with maybe that mobile announcement or BlizzCon, like Activision said, hey, we're going to align and centralize admin efforts here. And I don't know if they're related. I don't think there's any way to tell. But like, when you have a global publicly traded company like Activision, who really can make changes to your business model whenever they see fit, like, it shouldn't be surprising to anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And a lot of people, you know, they get confused, or they don't know like how things work, you know, and they see that the name is Activision Blizzard. So a lot of people look at that and think like that they merged together. You know, I mean, Blizzard is wholly owned by Activision. Yeah. They use that name just in name only because the name has equity.
Pure marketing. You know, pure marketing.
Pure marketing. And it was funny because, and this was partly from a store standpoint, when GameStop bought EB Games, that was a merger. They kept saying it was a merger. Like, it's not a merger. It's not a partnership. Like, our company bought their company. Like, that's not good PR. That's not good, like, for EB morale for their employees, even though they're making more money than we are. and so a lot of people don't understand that. And like, one thing I try to say on my podcast all the time, and one thing I try to iterate to people is like we need to be better. And it's not just when it comes to like, whether it's online harassment or it also comes to understanding the things you like go further, don't read a headline, like dig into it, like find what you can find. And I feel like with this Activision Blizzard thing is the same thing. Be better, like understand how the industry works. And Blizzard has gotten away longer than any other company in that situation or studio in that situation. Division probably is the best way to say it, because look at all the companies that like EA bought Maxis, and then they get to make like one or two more games and then they're gone.
Yep.
Microsoft buys Ensemble, and then Ensemble makes a couple, they make like one stinker. I don't even think they technically made a stinker, but then like they get broken up and absorbed into the company.
Yeah. Or you can even talk about the Rare stuff, right? They've completely went sideways.
Yep. Totally. Exact same sort of thing. And so like Blizzard somehow, because of, I shouldn't say somehow, we know how, their quality of product kept them safe for longer than any other company that's been in that same situation or any other division. And that time, in my opinion, is up. And so, and so you're seeing like, that's what, not to mention the Destiny and the Bungie issue, which I think is where a lot of these layoffs actually came from.
Probably.
I think it was just almost like a convenient timing. But yeah, so you're going to see, and like you were talking about the esports division thing with Heroes of the Storm scaling back because that's their least successful property. Now you're starting to see Activision say, that is underperforming. So we're taking it out of there. Like not everything Blizzard touches is gold anymore. And so they have a company has to come in and say like, you're not just allowed to free roam forever. Like exactly what you said was they're going to come in and say, okay, we need updates. We need like quarterly updates. We need to know that we need to know that this is improving. And if it's not improving, then they need to change something or they need to get rid of it.
No. And exactly. That's the larger conversation though. Right. And you hit on it and I think I sound defeated, but there's so many there's so many times where it's, and this one was kind of the tip of the iceberg. I've had many, but like, what is it? And I know this isn't exclusive to gaming, and I often compare gaming to politics, but what is it about gaming where everybody seems to want to talk about the business aspect of it and everybody wants to be an expert, but it doesn't seem like anybody, including the fans and including most people in the industry, it doesn't seem like anybody is willing to do the legwork to actually come up with an educated, well-thought opinion about the situation, right? It always feels like, oh shit, they just said revenues were at a record high in a call where they were, reducing force. Or, this isn't just, this goes on and on and on and all sorts of scenarios where people just pick that one thing to run with. And it has like, I feel like especially the professionals in the industry should hold themselves responsible to be at least a little more honest, because, and I forgot who posted something. Oh, it was Devolver Digital. They posted time to unionize. And I'm not going to, I don't have enough information to say if unionization is a good move or a bad move. But what I do know is the minute that Devolver Digital posted that, the comments, there was one specific comment that jumped out to me. And I thought, man, these people are doing a disservice to people that want to work in software development, not even just games, software development. And someone posted, I'm assuming it's a younger kid, because he said, he said, it scares the shit out of me. I'm paraphrasing. Scares the shit out of me. I just graduated for software development, and to go into an industry that I know that I might get laid off because my boss wants to make more money. And I'm like, oh, guys, like, that's not the story. That's not how it works. And like, maybe some of that goes on education. I get that. But like, this is coming. It's disappointing to me more than anything, because I feel like Devolver Digital or key voices in the industry could do a lot for educating people on some of these things. And they don't. Yes. And so like, instead they go to the internet and start reacting and complaining about these things. And they're complaining about these things that they could actually have a positive impact on. And instead of having a positive impact, they're having a very negative impact because they're representing it in an inaccurate fashion that I think is quite honestly, pretty irresponsible, to be honest.
Yeah. And I like Devolver's shtick. I love that, like, breath of fresh air and this kind of like anti-establishment sort of, like, that's their marketing team.
Totally, I agree,
and that's great. And I love it. They're hilarious. Their E3 stuff's hilarious. Like, sign me up. But I totally agree. And it's a little scary to know that a company that's that big, and I don't know they're like total employee count, but they're big as far as like in the industry, how known they are, that they can't do something more positive with that information. I totally agree with you. I think you nailed it right on the head. Like they don't have an obligation to. No, but they could educate, and so I think that frustrates me when you have the opportunity.
But I would argue this, right? Like, no, they don't have the obligation to. But I would argue this, that then don't say anything at all, because if you think that you don't have the obligation to, then coming out and just saying a simple one-word post like unionize, without saying anything else, that just puts gasoline on the fire at a time that's like, it's the wrong time to do that. You know what I mean? And with them and their marketing shtick, which again I love, it's created like these edgelords though. Like the people that follow them are so cool and edgy because they're down with Devolver, Yeah. And so then it's like, so then you say something like, so then they have to placate to them. So they say, watch this, I'm going to drop this word and we're going to like rile up kind of our base, and so like unionize, and it's like, that's so edgy and cool, even though technically it's not, because that's what everybody's saying. Yeah. But like they're saying it and they're not making a big post saying, hey, hey, Devolver, do you have a union? Do our employees at Devolver Digital, are they unionized? Yeah, did they unionize? Because they
making
could.
Steps? I mean, have you as a company, since you love unions so much, have you basically helped them create a union? I mean, that's the only thing I'd say. Now, I'm glad you bring up unions, because I could talk lengthy about like the benefits of unions. Yeah, and I like them. But you can't just apply them to an industry.
Well, it doesn't work that way, right? And that's always been my biggest point, is like. And that's what I was always trying to get at with these headlines, is like, unionizing is an option. It's an option for any industry, company, blah, 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 blah. And for some people, it's a great option. For others, it's not. But it's not, again, the broad brush, right? It's not one size fits all here. So while unionizing is an option, and I would love to have that conversation, there are certainly other conversations that could also help stabilize the video game industry, which is an unstable industry to begin with. But, it doesn't have to just be unionized as the only talking point. Not that you might not end there, right? Like it's about the conversation, right? It's about the journey to the solution. And I always say this, and I've said this to employees and companies and interviews I'm going for. It's not about a bullet point solution. Everything in large companies, and Devolver and Activision and most people in the industry know these things. What you're really talking about is what positions the company for success, what positions our employees for success. And what can happen is you might have a strategy in place that you say, this is going to position our company and our employees for success. And the market can change, business deals can go awry, and things can happen, and shit can change 6 months later, and all of a sudden you have layoffs. But I think that instead of just throwing a word at the wall and riling people up, and I get that that's Devolver, but it's bigger than that, because to date, I still have not seen anybody really lay out a good case for or against unionization in games or even their own company, because nobody's running with it. They're just yelling about it. And it's like, well, this is a good opportunity to have the discussion. Well, I mean, why? That's where I go, okay, Jason Schreier breaks news all the time. It's not his responsibility to do this all the time. But like, if there's anybody that could provide a good use case or a good business case for unionization, I think it would maybe be him. But nobody does it,
Yeah, and there was a new, like, I just saw it a couple of days ago that there was like one of the largest union organizers, union organizations came together and actually like wrote an open letter through Polygon. Okay. To like, I didn't see this. Here's an open letter to, and it's kind of a fluff piece, but I'm just saying, unions are great. You're all talented, amazing individuals. And your hard work needs to go deserved, but you shouldn't have to, waste all your free time on this. It's basically just them saying like, you should join a union, But then no one from Polygon is going to talk to people and say, hey, what would it take to unionize workers? And to like, no one's getting it started. They just see the headlines. And with Devolver, do you think that they would have even tweeted that if Kotaku hadn't done another article and if Polygon hadn't done an article? Like, it was just hot on that day.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so frustrating about it. It's a thing. And I know it's the media, and like, it's media in general now it's not about being right. It's about being first.
Yeah, it is.
And it's about being like edgy and like, let's be cool and let's get our fans. It's entertainment. Ever since news
for most
became
people, it is about being first, but there is a small segment of people like myself, like you, that I think want the thought piece. But yeah, I think we are probably few and far between, right? Because everybody wants to take the headline, then they want to get their podcast out, and without realizing that, like, hey, it only takes another 30 minutes to actually go up with something accurate, Well, right. And it's like, we're all reading the same stuff, so how are we coming to such different conclusions? Like, yeah, I read, like, my rotation is typically like, not so much anymore, but like Joystick, Kotaku, Destructoid, Polygon. And then I look at these like headlines and I say, okay, let's find more. And then I start hitting some of the tech sites, and I start hitting like, some of the like normal media stuff that would cover a story like this, but it's that video game bubble is just so strange to me. And like you said, there are some professionals and there's some people I really do like. And there's just so many people though, like it's ever since its inception of like gaming media has always been opinion based. Like, I don't really ever feel like there was ever much fact in it. It was always meant to be like, and then it was always a very like incestuous relationship of, well, if you give our games bad reviews or talk bad about our games, we're not going to give them to you. So you can't like, so it's always kind of existed. That's a huge conflict of interest that the industry still will not acknowledge. And and they always take it. There's two ways that I think this comes up, because a lot of people will run with the, hey, this person's advertising on your website, and so they're paying for a review, which I don't think happens a lot of times. Like, I think as far as business units go, at marketing, advertising, those relationships are completely separate from the editorial side, right?
Yeah.
But we saw it with GameSpot when Jeff Gerstmann gave a game a 2. That was advertised on the same thing, and Giant Bomb turned out to be great, but it's not as black and white. The games industry doesn't look. There is a conflict of interest there, and it needs to be, right. These places need to make money, but hey, like you can still there are still repercussions, in the words that you put on a paper, especially with somebody that's an advertiser, and advertisers have every right to pull advertising from your website if they don't agree with the message that you're sending. And it doesn't even need to be specific to the game that they're trying to sell, right? It's just that's a fine line. And so, I on one hand, no. Are they paying for reviews? No. But is it a conflict of interest? Yes. Is it necessary to keep the business running? Yeah. I mean, I always call those, KLOs, keep the lights on. Like you need that revenue stream. But it is a balancing act.
And then on the flip side of that, so then you've got, well, I guess on the same side of the coin, but curving a little bit. So now we've got that it's not even people that are advertising with you. We all have kind of these preset from our childhood. We've got these preset biases, right? So then you've got, and this is going to get into what we talked a little bit about with the Nintendo fans, the Apple fans, stuff like that.
Yep.
So then you've got people who are writing about these articles who maybe grew up with a Nintendo as their favorite system, always hated Sega. And maybe they don't even like current games. They love retro, and they hate how new games have everything online and microtransactions and stuff. So they hate that because they used to play games when you didn't put the game in and it was perfect. Remember? Because I don't know if you know this, but every game made before 1992 is perfect.
Oh yeah. You put them in and there was nothing game breaking.
Every game's perfect. So then you've got these kind of biases, right? And then you run into the issue of, what was the, like you have this, what was it? I was talking about Nintendo, the Metroid Prime delay.
Yeah. Oh god, boy.
Prime delay, right? So when Metroid Prime gets delayed, they have a direct specifically coming out and saying, "Hey, everybody, it's not going the way we want it to. And I actually salute them for this. I love that they did this. They say, it's not going the way we want it to. We're rebooting it. It's going to be out longer. We're going to put it in the original hands, the original developers studio anyway, probably not the original creators, but the original studio. Yep. And then, and we're sorry, but it's going to get delayed. Yep. And they just get like, there were articles upon articles of like Nintendo. They do what they always take care of us, Nintendo this, Nintendo that. And all I could think to myself was there was another game that got pushed back and got delayed and it just gets slaughtered for it. Like they come out and they announce, well, damn it. I can't remember what game it was. I pivoted there and forgot to.
Thanks for bringing that up because that's a good point right there. Well, the Metroid thing here, let me say this first, because again, I know Twitter personality versus podcast personality a little different here because I always get off on the gamers thing and yada, yada, yada. So I want to say, I think in general, the gaming community is awesome. And I wouldn't still be podcasting and interacting with people if I didn't think that. But there's a small piece of it that just always is just in the back of my head, just like scratching at me. And with this, with the Nintendo stuff, I think Nintendo handled it perfect. I think that was the perfect message. I think they went about it fantastic. But that said, and I'm going to use the battle or the Star Wars stuff, and this is a little apples to oranges. So I'm
no, that's it. That's exactly it. Yep, go ahead. That was exactly it.
But EA, people hate EA. EA came out and they didn't do a direct on it or any type of video, but the message was pretty close to the same. Now, Star Wars has been handled. You could argue the Star Wars handling of that franchise with EA has been on shaky ground, right? I get that. But EA came out and essentially said the same thing and said, we don't like the direction that this game is going. It's not canceled per se. We're going to be shifting, resources and trying to deliver the best Star Wars possible. And those articles were, and I love Jason Schreier's work, but that was EA's canceling Star Wars. And it's like, well, no, they essentially just said the same thing Nintendo said. They literally word for word almost just said, and they said it before Nintendo even said it. Like this was weeks ago, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and just got ridiculed for it. And this is where, and I've had people online call me, corporate supporter or this or that or all this shit. And I'm just going guys, like, no, but like, comprehend what is being said here and just understand it's the same message. If you don't like EA, fine. I'm not going to tell people what to like or dislike, but I do expect at least some sort of consistency and hopefully how this stuff is covered or how people react. You know what I mean?
Right. They're predispositioned to hate EA. They're predispositioned to hate Activision. So it was easy when Blizzard came out and made and it was a snafu with the Diablo Immortal announcement.
That was bad.
It was bad. There's no way around that. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you guys are being too mean. Like that was poorly done, but like people were predispositioned to hate Activision. So do you notice like the articles weren't even necessarily that Blizzard sucks? It was that Activision sucks and Activision's ruining Blizzard.
Right. Despite ironically, 8 weeks after everybody was just ripping Blizzard a new one, right? Like 8 weeks later. So 8 weeks ago, whatever it was, I forgot when, maybe it was it the end of last year? Maybe, I don't think it was in January. Nevertheless, Blizzard had that snafu. It was a bad look. Like, I think we can all agree that was a bad look.
Yep. It happens. Yep.
But again, the reaction to it was, screw Blizzard, F Blizzard, da 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 da. Yeah, I can't even remember how infuriating it was. And then now all of a sudden, Blizzard, screw Activision. Like, my God, guys, just everybody take it down a notch. And it's like, I feel like there's like, I don't know. It's like every week it's something new. And it's like, but last week it was this. It's like a constant hypocrisy.
It is, and it's a constant like outrage. And I know that like I don't even like to use the term outrage culture because that's something that's been like hijacked by political and like so I don't want to use it in like this generic term, but it's like every week we find like a new story that's unbelievable. Like it's unbelievable that this happened. And there are legitimate big stories. Like a company laying off 8% of its staff, which is 800 people, is like bonkers. That's huge. And everyone should be talking about that. Everybody should be talking about that. And it's weird though, because like, we're talking that people, because of Nintendo's history and their very rich history, a well-deserved history, has bought them a certain amount of like clout with their customer base. And so now you've got people essentially in the game news industry that are really opinionist. And that's okay. Like I said all the time, I'm not a news journalist, man. I'm an opinionist. I'm just going to throw out my, I always try to like lay the groundwork and then throw my opinion on top of it.
It's entertainment as well.
I'm an opinionist. I'll never be like, breaking a story. I never really had this conversation with people outside of Drop Rate, but like I actually talked to someone who worked at Quantic Dream about the harassment that was going on there last year. And like, he wanted me to break open the story. And I'm like, I'm a nobody, dude. I can't do it.
You're like, I can't do that,
I started passing the story on to other people because I was like, this is just, it's not me, man. It's not me to source. And he sent me like, I kid you not, I have documents, like corporate documents that probably should never have been sent to me. And I don't even know, but I'm just saying like, it was weird. And so I'm like, nope, this isn't for me. That's not what I do. I'm an opinionist.
Yeah, I'm with you. And like to that point, and it's funny. Sorry, I don't want to I don't want to jump in and completely sidetrack your thought here, but like, it is funny that, and this comes from my reactions with some people in some of the larger media outlets, how they always treat, and this is kind of a side point, but they always treat anybody that's just an opinionist, right? As we probably call ourselves, like we don't know shit. Like I'll be honest with you. Yeah. Like I've been in the same situation where I'm like, that's some ridiculous things you're telling me here, because it's like, it'd be, ignorant to think that like, having your foot in some of this stuff for as many years as you or myself potentially have, that information doesn't somehow trickle to us. But yeah, that's not my spot. I'm not running with that, but I don't even open my mouth. I'm like, hey, that's some crazy shit. You shouldn't have told me. I'm not going to do anything, but like for future reference, I don't actually even want to know. Like, I don't even want to know that stuff.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, and we're not parading around as journalists, like there needs to be a distinction there. And it's okay. If you're an opinionist, I'm cool with that. Like if I like you and I think your opinion's straight, I'm going to enjoy that, but I don't parade that as like a journalism thing. And I feel like, that's what Giant Bomb's always been really good at, I think, is that I don't think they've ever tried to pretend that they're like news guys.
No.
But then there's also the other side of that, which is my opinion is fact. And, and so like so many people, because they've been in the industry so long, like their opinion is 100% accurate. And if you disagree with their opinion, then you're just wrong.
Well, and it's weird because it's just
weird.
Part of it though, I'm of two minds on that, because part of it may be no fault of their own and just maybe on, in some instances on the consumer side of their content, just taking it that way and not realizing that they're actually operating on the opinion side. But on the flip side of that, and Giant Bomb in some way, I love Giant Bomb and I don't want to completely throw them under the bus, but there is a little bit of kind of cachet to how they present their opinions, that what we are saying is true because we are saying it. And it's like, well, that's not actually right either. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like they set the standard essentially, and I look at this and I think it's fair to say, because I tweeted about this last week, but it's fair to say that the average person that they probably deal with is uninformed. It's just a matter of fact. I mean, I deal with customers every single day that say the most ridiculous things. And I don't say that as like, I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying that they go on YouTube and there's so much misinformation. I was saying this to somebody yesterday in the store, back when we were kids, there was my friend's dad worked at Nintendo.
Yep,
and he told me that Zelda 3 is coming for NES next week, So there was always misinformation. But now with the internet and with YouTube in particular, the rumor mill and people making fake videos, like, I mean, someone made a montage video of, what's her name from Heavenly Sword, and like she's the daughter of Kratos or something. It's like a video
Heavenly
mashup,
Sword is such a great game. I'm glad you brought that up.
So
oh my God, I'm gonna play it again.
Dude, I absolutely love that studio, and they don't get enough respect.
I do want to. We have to talk about a little bit of games, but we're on a good thing. But God, that game is great.
So like somebody came in one day and was like, "Oh man, did you know that like Kratos has a daughter?" And I was like, "What?" And then he starts telling me basically he explains this video to me, and I'm like, "Oh, and like." just weird stuff, and my tweet last week was, that someone came in and he was 100% convinced that Sega was going to buy the Xbox division from Microsoft.
I saw that.
And now, the other one about PS5 being totally backwards compatible, like I even did a story on that, and the rumors are out there. The patents are pointing towards it. So you're like, oh, that's totally believable.
But it's still the same thing, right? People see something and they're just running with it. Now it's a thing. In fairness, though, and I'm going to throw myself under the bus. I did this. I literally did the same thing yesterday with the Scalebound, which was just a rumor the Scalebound is Switch. But like, again, it's back to the opinion stuff. And again, I think people always look at like what my main announcement was. And I'm like, no. I'm driving more towards just like, why are people so accepting of Scalebound now when it was just getting shit on, 8 months ago?
Well, and Microsoft ate big shit for that too, though. They were like, they canceled Scalebound, and people were like, oh my God, like Microsoft is dead.
Microsoft is new AA. They're just killing people.
and so, my whole point wrapping this whole thing together is we're all predispositioned to our opinions. I prefer Sony. I have since the PS1. Like I had a Nintendo growing up. I sold it to a neighbor to buy a Genesis. Then I remember having a Genesis, and then I remember working summers so I could buy a PS1. And ever since then, like Sony's been my preferred console, and so even I have biases when I read a news article about this or that, and I see Microsoft, flopping on something, or if I see an article, I'm automatically like, yeah, that's fine, But then you stop and go, okay, but wait a minute, let's actually read what's going on here. And I've actually been surprisingly very very complimentary of Microsoft's angle. Like they have a bead on the future. They know what they're going for. They had to give up this generation to do it. And like, this is the test generation now. And that's okay, because that's a company that they didn't need to make money today for tomorrow. They're looking ahead to be like, okay, let's test some stuff today and see what's going to be standard tomorrow. And so like, even I'll give that up to them and be like, man, it's gonna be really interesting next generation. Like, yeah, everyone can look at it and say, man, Sony crushed Microsoft, and next generation's gonna be like, how do you don't have proof of that? Sony could lay an egg out the gate like they did with the PS3 and be right back where they were, 10 years ago.
No, it's totally. And I'm completely actually in the same boat. I was a Sega kid growing up, and then I
love your Master System games.
I do. Fuck, dude, I love Master System. I do. I'm not even going to go down that path right now, but God, I love Master System. But secondly, I bought the Saturn. And I totally regretted buying the Saturn. And Mitch and I have talked about this a few times, but like, long story short, I bought the Saturn. One day we went to rent. Mitch was like, we went to rent games in Waseca, Minnesota. If anybody is listening from southern Minnesota, at a place called Midwest Games. It was a gas station / video game rental store, which a lot of us are accustomed to here in the Midwest. But, all they had was like 3 Saturn games, and like it just had soccer. And so we rented soccer, and like halfway into like playing soccer, Mitch was like, maybe we should go rent a PlayStation. And I was like, you son of a... So anyway, I returned the Saturn, and then I became a huge Sony guy up through really the PS4. And even early on in the PS4, but then I started to like hit this thing where I became a little more interested in just the deeper dive into what this stuff was. And, I was in my early 30s at that point, and I was still had that frame of mind, right? But then eventually I started seeing what Microsoft was doing and what they were going for. And I was going like, yeah, I still love Sony, but you can't discount and try to reduce Microsoft to, they didn't sell as many hardware units, right? And I've said this before, like selling hardware goes a long way to selling software, which is where profit is, and accessories, so on and so forth, right? The units sold isn't always the number, because, we don't get a lot of software sales margins, blah, 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 supply chain. I'm not going to get into all that. But like, I look at it and go, Microsoft is making moves right now that I don't think people realize are going to be industry standard 5 years from now, right? Games Pass, it's fucking phenomenal.
Awesome. I love it. I absolutely love it.
The Xbox interface is trash still. It's slow. I don't know how like they're obviously going to need
so bad. bad.
They're going to like, even on the X, it's still garbage. Like they're going to need to fix that. But you know, at the time, I don't know how they got there. Like at the time that released, I think Windows 8 was still a thing and Windows 8 wasn't great, but I love Windows 10, right? So like, there's these things they're putting in place, relationships with Nintendo, open gaming, and people will argue, well, they had to do it because they're behind. Yeah, there is that. 100%. You know, desperation oftentimes will result with innovation. I love that, though. They came at it and said, we're going to do things that are awesome for gamers. They made all these studio acquisitions. Now, we don't know if those studio acquisitions are going to pan out, but I'm also not going to just assume they're not, right? And going into next gen, and we still technically have generations, I'm excited, man. And that's the thing is like, look, I know not everybody's going to buy every system. Not everybody can afford to do it on day one and all of these things. But when you look at Microsoft, and this is how I don't understand how I can be angry, and this is always my argument against Nintendo, Microsoft is making gaming affordable for everybody. And that's going to be even more clear if they can get the cloud working. And everybody's like, well, screw cloud because all of this lag and blah, 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 blah. Guess what? Maybe you're not the target audience for cloud. And guess what? There's still going to be a hardware option for you. But for people that aren't as invested, if someone can go download an Xbox app, like they can download a Netflix app and just casually play software for a monthly fee, man, I want that world where everybody can enjoy this hobby that I've been enjoying for the last, you know, I started playing games when I was probably 3. So the last 33 years of my life, like, why not? Why? Like, I just don't understand the lack of just like, you don't have to do it, but man, it's a great option. I love it.
Well, and it gets back to, because it's funny you're talking about, you know, the numbers and the system, selling systems and stuff like that. And one thing that a lot of, again, you know, misinformation or, you know, non-information is that people don't realize. So, and I was lucky enough working at GameStop to see some of the numbers of this stuff. So say, let's take, I mean, at the time I was there, it would have been PS3, but let's just take a PS4 that sells for, you know, $299 retail. Mm-hmm. I kid you not, GameStop most likely paid about $284 for that $300 system.
Oh yeah.
Like the margins on systems and hardware or systems is awful. On a new game that's $60, they usually pay around $48 to $49 for that game. Terrible margins. And so the headsets, the accessories, all the other stuff, that's where they finally start making some money. And that's actually why the GameStop business model is failing, is because when they got out of the older stuff and they only wanted to carry the current generation stuff, they make such little margins on new that they have to just destroy margins on used. And so then you get that reputation of, oh, they're not really paying that much and stuff. But it's because like the new game industry, I don't even know how it survives with offering retailers margins that small.
It's ridiculous.
You know, and that's why I always get a little irritated. And I don't want to go on this whole tangent. We'll say this for another podcast. But like the whole where, you know, developers are coming out against used games, because like imagine if GameStop just closes forever. There are less places for these games to reach people, you know, kind of like you're saying with the app and like you're reaching new customers. You never want to make your hobby less accessible. And if you close 6,000 the only dedicated video game retailer, and I say this as an ex-employee who has no love for them, you know, like I have no love for my middle management and I appreciated my time there, but I have no, you know, I'm done. I'm done with them. And like, but to just take the only dedicated video game retailer of 6,000 stores and get rid of it is not good for the industry.
No, it's not. And I hate the people. Here's the thing. Whatever you feel about GameStop, dancing on GameStop's grave, I've had my situations with GameStop and, you know, them grabbing cases out of the drawer when I grabbed the one off the shelf that had the manual in it, and I get home and it doesn't have the manual, things like that. I've had my complaints about GameStop, but I don't want to lose GameStop. Like I'm not going to lie. I still probably hit a GameStop at least once a week.
Well, now they're doing 9 p.m. releases. Dude, I got like, when I get a new release game the day before Amazon will ship it to me, I get it at 9 p.m. Yeah, I'm going to go buy that. And I can't even digitally, I don't think I have access to it till like 11 p.m. Mm-hmm. So like, are you kidding me, dude?
And for me, like 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., way, like that's
big difference.
That is 2 hours actually that I would be gaming, or at least an hour and a half by the time I get home. Or if it's 11 p.m., I'm like, well, I'll grab it tomorrow, right? Yeah. But like that's the thing. Like I'm not going to sit here and I'm not a GameStop defender,
right?
But
exactly.
But I do think that losing that representation, because again, for a lot of people, that is another avenue for them to make gaming affordable, because playing video games, yes, you can play video games in a lot of ways, but it is not a cheap barrier to entry.
It's become a rich man's game, it seems, to play all the new stuff.
Or people find a way to do it, right? I mean, people find a way. But it's and that's always kind of been my Nintendo argument, is I've just never seen such support for this. Like, I'm not actually even arguing against Nintendo's pricing per se. I'm not even saying that I don't spend the money on it. I'm just saying, like, is anyone else not pissed off about this? Because I'm sick of spending $60 on every game. But then we go back to gaming is technically cheaper than ever as far as inflation goes. So it's like I'm stuck in this area where like I'm almost arguing at myself from both sides. But like, yeah, it's just I don't want to see GameStop go away. I don't want to see instant gratification of physical media go away. Like, I love that shit. I love going to a GameStop. Or a local store. Let me be fair. Or a local store in Minnesota, right? And there's a lot of them, and some that I really enjoy. I go to those probably once a month. I love that, but I don't want to get rid of that GameStop avenue. Well,
and we talk about hypocrisy, right? And is probably my most hated thing, my least favorite thing in the whole world is hypocrisy. Like, and I'm not saying like if you have a view and then you change it, it's fine. But if you're going to have a view on something, you need to hold true and not just allow it because it's your favorite company or whatever. But look at the hypocrisy of this. The outcry of 800 people being laid off of Activision. Do I know how many people get laid off if GameStop closes?
That's got to be. I forgot what the last number was, but last time I checked. So here's the thing. I actually, because I went back to school in 2015 because I never finished a degree, and I wrote a whole thesis on GameStop and some other things. I forgot the number, but isn't GameStop worldwide, with all of their acquisitions and things, something like 16,000 employees or something?
It's got to be around there, because I want to say total store number, and this has been fluctuating since I've been gone, 8 years now. So I know that they opened a bunch of stores. Now I know they're closing some, but it was around 6,000 stores. So that doesn't count corporate.
So it's got to be higher than that. 22,000 full-time employees, 22 to 45,000 part-time as of last year. Huge numbers.
I was just going to say about average about 7 people per store, 6,000 stores. There's your 42K right there, And so imagine that, right? And then they talk about, well, if GameStop closing, you just get your games at Walmart. Okay, but Walmart doesn't do pre-orders. And the pre-order debate is also kind of infuriating to me when people talk about like wanting to support developers, but then they think that pre-orders somehow don't help developers. But and of course, pre-ordering...
But it's such a good conversation, though, that like everybody just picks and chooses. My God, I don't understand it. But anyway, go on.
But yeah, so the hypocrisy of it is we have all these articles about 800 people being laid off of Activision, but these same sites will have GameStop sucks articles and that GameStop doom and gloom and that GameStop will be closing soon. And like the change to GameStop's pre-order policy with the money back. Within 30 days, it's cash. After 30 days of release, like you get store credit for your pre-order money down or whatever. That's such a non-issue.
It was a non-issue, but everyone reported it as if it was an issue. And you're like, so A, this is probably going to be a very small percentage of people that it actually impacts. And B, if you forget about your pre-order for 30 days, like there are... there are financial reasons why GameStop might not be able to just release those liquid assets to you.
Right. Well, and that's what, when I was there, I remember that was always a big thing, because every year they would show like that you got to see on your P&Ls what your sitting store credit was.
And actually, I want to just jump in. P&L is profit and loss, everybody.
See, that's good. I went too. I can't go too fast, and we're about educating, right? That's what this is about. Like,
and let me rephrase that, because actually that is one of my pet peeves. Is like when people say things in a condescending fashion. I didn't mean to do that, but P&L is profit and loss for people that don't know. So you have, and this is why the revenue thing drove me nuts with Activision.
Yes.
You'll have, balance reports and a variety of different financial reports that come out every fiscal quarter. And a big piece of it is profit and loss, and revenue is a big number, but profit is long story short, profit and loss is really going to be something that's impactful for every business, more so than just reporting a revenue number.
Right. And that's what, like, revenue, I know a lot of people look at that. Like at the end of the year, I have gross sales. That's essentially revenue. And it's like, so this is gross sales. That's not how much money I made. That's not how much money I have in the bank. That's the total potential I had to make, not counting my costs, whether it's my purchasing costs, my payroll costs, all that stuff. And that's, and so that's kind of the same thing with profit and loss. So at GameStop, you see these P&Ls and it'll straight up, it'll tell you how much store credit was like unused. And you could get those reports, and sometimes it's in the thousands. And so when GameStop does it this way, it's just their way, I think, of being able to actually account for that. Because I believe it's something to do with their taxes too, but I believe it was something that when it was store credit, it's not counted as income or something. So they're holding on to this money in like an imaginary
that would
account.
probably, I don't know most likely that would, I don't know what side of the ledger that falls on, but when you're talking about debits and credits, right, that's going to fall on the opposite side they want it to, right? So that'd probably actually fall on the debit side of the ledger. Totally
messing up their sheets, And so they're like, well, after 30 days, if we can take all this, turn it into cash, and then kick it into like a fund that's essentially, this is unredeemed credit fund, then that's something that they can, I think, better track as well. And so anyway, it was like you said, it was a non-story, but people were so quick to jump on that and start saying, okay, doom and gloom, GameStop sucks, GameStop's the worst. I mean, like, I actually got a couple subs on our YouTube channel the other day people who were just like, wow, you actually had a really normal like take on GameStop. Thank you. And I'm like, I know. And I'm somebody who I could blast them. Let me tell you, I could tell you some of the things that went on there that are unbelievable, but it's, I'm just shooting it straight from my point of view. And so it's that hypocrisy though. And that's what bugs me so much is like, they'll pine over 800 jobs at Activision and then wish for the closing of GameStop, and it's 42,000 employees.
42,000. I know, it's ridiculous.
And that's okay, because I never see an article say that. Like, hey, we would hate to see GameStop go, because where there's jobs going to go? Like, Walmart's not going to hire them. I mean, like there aren't that many.
And
jobs
we're talking
for that
about
many
a different level of employee here, right? This isn't, and I don't have the demographics. You probably have better insight into this than me. I mean, we're not. When you're talking about store management at a GameStop, right? How many store managers are there per GameStop? Is it just one per location?
Yeah, you get one store manager, one assistant manager, and then, store leaders, I think they're called now, but I use the terminology from when I was there, So store manager, assistant store manager, and then you usually have one or two part-time key holders.
Okay.
So you have 4 management types that can do management roles, and then you'll typically have 3 to 4 part-timers, but of those 3 to 4 part-timers, there's, I kid you not, about 10 hours to go between the 4 of them per week.
Okay, so
really, you've got like 1 part-timer and then 4 other employees.
But when you think about it, right? I'm not going to throw a percentage here, and this isn't trying to reduce skill sets here, but you're probably outside of you're probably talking about a lot of entry-level employees, at least in those part-time positions, right? High schoolers,
absolutely.
High schoolers trying to fill time, people just starting out in a career. Certainly some of those people grow those positions into those assistant managerial or managerial positions where they're going to have maybe a little easier time transitioning into a different role if their job gets cut. But when you're talking about, let's just say you're putting 25,000 kids nationwide, and not kids, right? Young adults or so on and so forth, out back into the market. That's a big hit. Like and I would argue that's not, even from a number standpoint, that's bad in comparison to Activision. But I have a feeling that of the 800 people, and this was always that cracked me up about the Activision thing, was all these gaming developers. I love this, about the gaming industry saying, hey, we've got jobs. If you see anything, apply.
Yeah, but love when they come together. Yep.
But the other part of it is, well, if these were admin HR jobs, right, a lot of these people might not be tied to video games. Like they're probably qualified to move horizontally into different industries. Like that's not, it might not be the end of the world for a lot of these people. I can't speak otherwise. Losing your job sucks, but it is what it is.
Well, and so like when it comes to GameStop, I mean, I would say the average GameStop manager even is not a college educated employee. So I would say like most, if not all, I can't say all obviously, but I would say most GameStop employees are not college educated. In fact, the third key position, like the part-time, so that is almost like you need them available for up to 30 hours a week, but you need them to work opening or closing shifts. So it's like they could be a part-time college student, but mostly they need open availability. So you're looking for people either who want a part-time job that requires full-time availability, which is like mental to even ask, but they get by on the whole, we sell games. So it's, so we sell games. So you want to work here. But I would say, so then you're putting even the store managers, say the 6,000 store managers, let's say being conservative, half of those managers don't have college degrees. Part of GameStop's selling point and part of why I liked it so much there was your upward mobility. So you'd be able to get promoted to multiple roles in the company. I was in the district manager training program, to get out of the store manager level to get to district manager level when I left.
Yep.
So like I could get promoted, but if that business closes, a lot of these people who work there, they're banking on moving up internally. And so once you take that option away with that company going away, they have to start at the bottom. And I mean, being an assistant manager at GameStop won't get you an assistant manager at Best Buy. They're just different amounts, like volumes of total sales and size of company. You might be able to be like, if you're an ASM at GameStop, you could probably be an ASM at like Foot Locker or an ASM at,
Well, and that's why job titles are like a lot of people, and this is why job titles are kind of bullshit in a lot of ways, is that, being on the hiring side so many times, I don't really look at job titles ever. Other than like to gauge, I will look at job titles to gauge movement, right? Like how did you move through a company, so on and so forth. But like, yeah, if I look and see, VP of marketing, and then I look at the roles and responsibilities, like, okay, well, you're not going to be a VP of marketing at this Fortune 500 company. You know what I mean? And it's not to crap on people's skills, but like you can't always make a move horizontally job title wise. I had a good friend that worked at a company that I left actually early in 2018. He was a director at that company, and he had gotten laid off, and I had went and got lunch with him, and he said, yeah, there's just not a lot of director jobs out there. And I had to have the conversation with him. And this was before I went and took my director position at a large company that I got laid off from, ironically. But I said, you got it. You can't, like, you're at 80% of places, you're not a director. And so like, you have to understand that it's not a step. It might be a step back from a job title. So be it. Find a company that you can make movement in. Find a company that you can have a direct impact on its success. And that speaks more to your skills and your ability than any job title would ever speak. Right. And I think that's where people get caught up a little bit. And look, I'm not trying to get on my soapbox here, but I'm so big on career ownership in a lot of this. And I've always done it with employees that I've had, is that, putting people in positions to be successful is always important to me as a coach or a mentor, but also taking the ownership of putting yourself in a position of being successful. And that's not always chasing a job title. Like, as a matter of fact, that's probably the worst way to go about career ownership. You know what I mean? And like, but I think it's worth talking about, like, the horizontal movement that these people are going to make is, you're losing a huge segment of available workers that probably are going to have a tough time finding jobs elsewhere. And then you've got a segment of workers that were strictly sticking at GameStop because they had great employees. These are the best employees. They're there. They're passionate about it and want to move up the ladder. You pull that ladder out from under them, And now, yeah, man, that's just a bad situation. That sucks for those guys or gals.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And there's nowhere to go. I mean, like it's not like you just have that many openings right now in case that company closes. And so let's say Amazon fills that void of GameStop or something, you know, and so they say we're going to ship the thousands of copies of games, and so they don't, you know, so the game developers and the publishers don't lose any sales. But Amazon's not going to hire 6,000 GameStop managers. They don't have positions for that.
No.
You know, even if they took over the amount of volume that I mean, they probably push out close to that anyway. I mean, who knows what their numbers are on like new release games, but yeah, so it's, yeah, you're and then you get into the whole issue of there's less money to go around. So then they can't buy what they're passionate about, which, hey, by the way, is video games. And so, right. You know, it's the whole thing, but yeah, I just can't wrap my head around the hypocrisy side of it. And you know, it's the same thing with EA or Activision. Like, there's people out there who would just be begging for EA to close. Or like, I just wish this company would go out of business. Like, you just bitched that Activision laid off 800 people.
Yeah.
You want to go down a global company that, you know, I mean, and yes, like, we all have our issues with certain policies. You know, even GameStop managers. I have a lot of friends that are still managers, have been there for like decades. You know, and you know, they hate the things that customers hate about GameStop. You know, usually if it's a corporate policies, I mean, they hate. You know, they don't like begging people for reserves and subscriptions to Game Informer.
No, do you think people? I love my Game Informer print subscription, but yeah,
I still get it, man. I love it.
Oh my god, I love it. Every time I get it in the mail, I'll see it on my USPS Informed Delivery. It's like a fucking holiday every month for me. But no, I mean, but that's the thing though. Like, you look at it and like, let's be real, and this might be the same for Best Buy, and I don't know, maybe there's you know, bonuses and just things around it, but like, these people don't want to always be shilling the corporate message all the time, but that's the job, you know?
Yep.
So
and I agree with what you're saying there too, and I obviously, working in a corporate environment that long and then owning my own business, like, I do have a different take on a lot of things, you know, like, I see a lot of selfish employees. You know, and it's weird because you read a lot of things out there people will say things like, you know, you don't owe the company anything, you know, like, you don't owe them this, you don't owe them that. I'm like, no, but like, we have an arrangement, right? And that arrangement is like, I'm going to pay you a good money, create a good working environment, and then you're going to work hard for me. Like I don't expect, like, if I pay you minimum wage and then I'm like, you need to have your phone on you 24 hours a day. Like, you know, I mean, I have checked expectations, which not everybody does, but I do. And so you have those checked expectations, but you don't, like, there's still expectations, you know? And so I struggle with finding like part-time employees. And it's the struggle I had at GameStop too, because your expectation at GameStop was like, you need someone with open availability, but I might only give you 10 hours a week, but I expect you to be open Monday through Sunday. You know, it's like,
yeah, it's
who can give you that availability and then only get paid minimum wage at 10 hours a week?
Yep.
And so like there is a disconnect there though too, where people are so, and I don't want to say, again, I hate using like these overused terms that people abuse in political conversations, but like entitlement, like there is a sense of like, you know, I deserve this. And what I try to teach to my guys, I have 2 full-time managers, full-time salaried managers. Which, by the way, I just gave them store title of store managers because then I feel like if I ever close, they can go to somewhere and say I was a store manager. Well, but again, titles don't mean shit.
Well, you know? Well, and actually, let me actually kind of go back on that a little bit. Titles do mean something. And as a, you know, as an owner of a company, I like, kudos for acknowledging that. I mean, I think like that goes a long way because I actually applaud that. I mean, store titles do personally carry some weight. It's just I don't think chasing a title necessarily always equates to happiness. Sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And so then what I try to get with them and what I try to get them to understand is that, and obviously it's different for me. I'm a small business. You know, I think I have 7 employees total. 2 are kind of like part-timers. They only work when we need them. You know, only regularly there's like 4 or 5 of us that work regularly. But I try to tell them, like, you know, sometimes you have to do things to take care of the company. Like, not everything can be like, it sounds silly, but here's a good example. Like, we had a really rare game come in, you know, it's like a $400 game. One of the employees really wants it. And I think we ended up paying like $300 for it or something. With his normal discount that I would normally apply to everything, he was going to get like $60 off. So I'm like, hey man, like, I will honor our arrangement, which is your discount, but I need you to kind of see that this is one of those kind of big fish that we need to make money on. Yeah. You know, and this and that. And so like what I'll do is I'll kind of meet him in the middle. I'll say, I'll tell you what if I take this percentage off, and that way you're still getting a deal, not like a regular customer, whatever. And so I'm trying to instill in them that there is like a part that they have to work hard for the store and take care of the store so the store can take care of us back in return. Now, on the flip side, and I know I'm probably in the very, very, very tiny minority of owners that would say this, but on the flip side of that, my plan is to have the business take care of them as making them part owners. Like that's something that I strive for. Like I would love for them to own a part of it as well. Like they have to prove that to me, and they have to work for that. But like that's my commitment back to them. Is that with my expectation of what I expect of them, I'm going to give them something back if they can meet those expectations.
So let me ask you this, because that's awesome to hear. I want to bring up one thing, because our GameStop conversation led into this, because like I said, I go to GameStop a lot, and I always think about the stories about how many games they've thrown away over the years. And I go,
sure.
And I go, in today's market, if instead of throwing those games away and they just had them in some warehouse somewhere, GameStop would have maybe been positioned to be like the leader in CIB retro gaming, physical media, right? Like they probably threw away so much stuff, but
and so sometimes what was thrown away, I think, is actually grossly over exaggerated.
Okay.
So I can only speak of the time I was there.
Okay.
But the only things that ever got tossed were games that were defective, and the cost of them to repair was greater than the cost of profit they would make.
Or like Madden 12 or something.
Exactly. So the only games you ever saw getting thrown away were like old sports PS2 games. And a lot of times it was defective merchandise, right? So when stuff gets traded in, you either apply a refurbish fee or you don't. So if the game's scratched and you have to send it away to get fixed, because they don't have reservicers in the stores, they send them to their corporate refurbishing center. And so if you took it in, you said this game is scratched, and then they sent it to the warehouse. If you took in a game that say was worth 25 cents and you said it was scratched, it would actually say don't take this game, because it would be considered a field destroy. And so then they would have like, or say like you sold a game and it came back defective, you would go to return it to the warehouse. You'd go through the computer and say, I have a list of 20 things I have to return defective to warehouse. And they would say, okay, these 19 things you send to the warehouse, this 20th thing, just destroy it. It's field destroy. And so it would sit in a box until your district manager came around, and then he would look at the list of field destroy items. He would count everything that's in the box, and he would instruct you to destroy it. And so there were games that we did destroy, but like, it was grossly over exaggerated. Like there was never any like cartridges from back in the day thrown away, never anything like that. That was all
okay. That's good to know.
It was all consolidated. So like, when I worked there, when we still carried Super Nintendo games. And so what happened though was they're like, and at the time we were also happy because we wanted more shelf space in the stores. But like, so Super Nintendo games, we took all of ours, we shipped them to Milwaukee. And there was one store in Milwaukee that was like known as the retro store kind of. So all the Nintendo games got sent there because on their, I don't want to say P&Ls, but on their, what's it called? There's like another sheet where you figure out like the percentages of what product you sell compared to others. And they had like the highest sales of Super Nintendo games. So we all shipped them there. And then they would sell them. And then eventually there'd be 25% off, and then 50% off, and then 75% off, and then they were gone. So over the course of like a year, they just eventually just blew the market out. And that's how it was with PS1 and PS2. They actually threw away all the cases and then just put the discs on the shelf to save space. It was the worst thing in the entire planet. And so they did that. And then they have, there was a corporate directive for a while.
Yeah, that thing is just like, really?
That was painful. Thankfully, like I had friends that were managers that had those DS cases that they were going to throw away. And they're like, do you just want them? And this was right when I opened my store. And I was like, yes, I'll take them.
I'll take everything.
Just don't throw them away. And so, I still have probably 200 DS cases in my back room that I just wait for the games to come in, fill them up, and sell them.
Oh man, thank you for that. That actually was one of my biggest things. Is even like 3DS stuff now. I still find it. Maybe this is. I don't know if this is GameStop or not, but or just consumers throwing cases away. I still have problems even finding like box 3DS stuff. And I'm like, where are these boxes going?
A lot of it's GameStop. If you have a couple prominent GameStops in your area, like I don't know if they do 3DS as well, but I don't think they keep cases for anything, or now they're instructed to keep cases in the back room. And then if you sell a game, you can grab the case, but I'm going to assume that like 99% of employees probably forget to check that.
Got it.
Because you're busy, why would you?
So I've got a pretty good relationship with one of the employees at a GameStop pretty close to me, and he knows now when I go in, and he's actively kept cases around for me. One of them was Sly Cooper on Vita.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, I didn't. It was funny because I went to buy the game, and he went, I don't have the box for it, and I was like, are you kidding me? And then it was cheap. I was like, all right, well, give me the game anyway. And so I bought the game anyway. Next time I went in, he remembered me and was like, hey, I got just a box for you. I was like, are you kidding me? That's amazing.
That's so cool. Well, and I think that's really what GameStop's always came down to. And that's why there's such a gap in people who love GameStop or people who hate it. It always comes down to the employees.
Yeah.
It's not the policies that bring you back to GameStop. Like, part of the reason I always knew I could be successful owning my own store was because the customer base I built at GameStop. I built it from, like, I took over an EB store when we merged that was doing nothing sales. Like, they were going to close the store, and I was given like 8 months to see if it actually was the store's fault or the staff's fault. And we turned it around, and I was like, part of this is me, of course, and I'm happy about it, but also, like, in the corporate rankings, I was a top 1% store for like 5 years in a row because the store did so bad. It was so easy to beat last year's comps and last year's, and to beat budget and comps because, like, that store was so terrible. And so, but I built a customer base there, and I was like, I know I can do this again. And instead of working an extra 20 hours a week for no extra money at GameStop, I'm just going to put 20 hours a week into my own store and see what happens.
That's incredible. I don't want to cut you off, but I want to jump in a minute here because I think it's a good, like, you hit on so many things in just that I don't think people think, I don't think people think about, like, when they're thinking about their marketability as an employee and what to put on a resume. And, like, I don't know how people miss this, or if it's schools or education, I don't know where it comes down to, but, like, things that you're sitting here talking about is, like, 1% in performance, turning stores around. Like, these are things that are incredible. And, like, I love hearing this stuff. Like, I get it. See, this is this business stuff that, like, I get excited about. Plus I'm not on the video game side of this. And, like, that just sounds incredible to me. And I think about it and I go, well, yeah, that makes 100% sense. Like I go, well, why wouldn't you just go get your own store? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And like other store managers, like I was also the guy, and there was a reason I was in the district manager training program, but, like, I was always the guy who was going above and beyond to help other stores. Like, I was the mentor for everybody. And I was like, well, and then really what broke the camel's back, and I won't go into the whole details because it's like my most embarrassing professional moment in my career. But basically I got kicked out of the district manager program because I had an altercation with my district manager verbally over the phone in front of other managers. And I basically, I verbally assaulted him. and basically it was around Christmas time, and he was ragging on all the managers, some stupid, unimportant thing. And I was like, hey man, why don't we focus on, like, the positive? And this was me on a conference call with my boss, by the way. And I was like, why don't we focus on the positives? It's really busy. We're about 2 weeks from Christmas. Let's work on getting this out. And he was basically, like, kept harping on people about, like, not getting something on a checklist done or something. And so I was like, I'm sorry. I'm like, and I don't know why I got so upset. I think it was because my brother was a manager at the time and he was on the call, and big brother mode kicked in, and I was like, don't talk to my brother like that. And so I just started railing on about how he doesn't know what he's doing. You shouldn't be such a negative person on this call. And then, so anyway, so they stripped me of my program, and I thought, okay,
no kidding. So they stripped you of it. This is crazy to me. See, I don't know what was said. I mean, I don't know the professional level that was addressed, but, like, I look at that, quite honestly, because there's a couple things that, like, it's so easy for people to just harp on and point out kind of what's going wrong. And, like, again, things that I look at, I go, I have no problem. Like, I would see that and go, great, somebody's speaking up. Let's like, wow, they took that. I mean, were you disrespectful, or that sounds like something I'd look at and be a pretty kind of appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, I was, I wish I could say I wasn't. And then I wasn't professional. And then, like, I always say to people, like, I never would consider myself mature, but I always consider myself a professional. And so, like, in my business, I always conduct myself.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like,
I am a consummate professional. And in that moment, though, I was not professional. I lost my cool. And I could have, after the call, I could have talked to him about it, probably and been fine. But no, and I did use some curse words, which ultimately was my undoing. But since our district manager used curse words all the time on the conference calls. So basically, I think I was going to get fired. And I just threatened that I would sue them for wrongful termination. And I had no basis for that. I just said it, I had no proof of that. I just said it. And then he had like an hour-long talk with HR. And then he came back out and was like, well, we're going to keep you, but you're out of the program. I was like, okay. And then after that happened, that was like December. I was like, you know what? I can't work here if there's no ability to move up. And I always told myself, like, with all the things I've done in this company and all the things I've done for it, if I'm not good enough to be at that level, then who is? And so then I started to think, like, if anyone else gets promoted to that above me, I'm never going to be able to respect them. Even if they're great people, great employees, I'll never be able to respect them. Yeah. Because I could do that better in my head. I'm not knocking them, this hypothetical person. But, and so then in March, I left in March. That was March 2011 was right. I left the day before the 3DS launched.
Got it. Okay. When the 3DS launch was kind of a cluster anyway, wasn't it?
Oh man, that was great. That was great. How bad that was. And so yeah, I left GameStop. I want to say it was March. Man, I want to say 26th was when the 3DS launched originally. And then I opened my store on April 16th. Like, I didn't even waste a month.
So you've had stores now for 8 years then, 8 or 9 years.
Yep. It'll be 8-year anniversary in April of Game Trade.
Oh, that's awesome. So I just like, we've chatted online and through Twitter and some other things, but like just this conversation, I have to be honest with you, like everything you're telling me is just fucking incredible. And like, these are the things where when you hear stories like this, I'm like, these are the guys, these are the people keeping gaming alive, like keeping the vision alive for like what gaming should be. And like, I gotta be honest, it's not hyperbole. Like, I respect what you do and your approach to it so much. Like, it sounds incredible to me to just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna go start my own store. I'm gonna do it right. I'm passionate about games. Like, it's just amazing to me. Like, when I sit here and think about my hobby, and I'm going to be completely transparent here, like my hobby and like even myself, like the bullshit that I complain about, and then like hear about like how great you've been at doing it. I'm like, oh my God, these are the people. Like, this is why gaming is awesome.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much, man. That's really humbling. I appreciate it a lot. And I respect your opinions a lot. And that's why we started chatting a lot back and forth. I don't even know how we ever first interacted.
I don't know, man. It was just, just Twitter. And eventually you just kind of gravitate and go, oh, this guy's, who knows?
Well, yeah. And you know how it is, like the more you talk to someone, like the more they show you the things you're saying and liking. So, it's kind of like morphs into it morphs a bubble for you. But no, I appreciate that, man. And that's why I get super upset too, because I go on game runs every now and then. Like, I need to go to Minneapolis pretty soon. But I was in Chicago last August, and it's unbelievable what passes for a game store these days. Like, and I know I'm getting to the point where now I'm like the old man who's like I've done it all, and
get off my grass, kind of.
Yeah, but I'm to the point where it's like, we can be better. Like that's like my mantra, baby. It's like, be better. And I see these stores and I see them charging twice as much as shit sells for on eBay. It's called the Chicago tax, baby. It's just like, because it's Chicago, you can sell for double, because who cares if you piss off 1 million people? You got 4 million more to piss off next week. And so like the prices are crazy. The service is terrible. They're not organized. They have no product. And like, I'm confident to say this. I'm a pretty humble person, but there's things that I feel very confident about, and I will always be confident about. And I feel very strongly that my store is the nicest, best game store in all of Wisconsin. I only say all of Wisconsin because I haven't been to Minneapolis yet.
Well, so here's the thing. I looked at pictures of your store. So before, when you had messaged me on Twitter this morning and said, hey, when can you do a podcast? I was like, yeah, whenever, whatever. And I had went to your profile page and I'd looked again at the pictures of your store, because I was like, I've never, like, I'm not creeping on your media all the time. I just kind of see what you post. Sure. Then so I was digging through your store pics and I was like, that's a beautiful store. And so a couple weeks ago, I don't know if you remember that I had posted about me buying that Demon Souls. and about a store that I loved all of a sudden got more stores, and now it just seems like they maybe spread their inventory too thin, and then the experience at these stores was, wasn't great. And I haven't been back to the parent store yet, so I can't speak to that. But I remember going in, having that conversation, and walking out and going like, and the guy running the store that was in the store at the time was someone I'd interacted with at the parent store. And I walked out going like, this isn't, like, I'm glad that there's a store closer to me, but I would have happily drove an extra 15 minutes to have the full selection and not walked into what was like literally a 1977 Kmart. It was just it was just a bad shopping experience. And that's when I started tweeting that stuff and saying like, man, this is one of my favorite stores. I think tried to, reach out in the metro, and I think that maybe it was a bad move for them because they were a destination for me.
Yep.
And now I started to have questions and go like, well, then what's left at the main store, right? And the prices were always something pretty fair, but I walked away from that with a pretty bad taste in my mouth. And as far as the rest of the stores in the Twin Cities area, I think they're all good. But I mean, I'm looking at the things you're posting, the items that you get in stock, just the way your store's laid out and just everything else. And I go, I don't know if we have anything even close to what you have. So anyway, long story longer, I was like, I'm out of a job. I don't know why I haven't even just driven out that way yet. So if I get some time, I'm going to drive. I got to just figure it out because we've gotten destroyed with snow, at least in Minnesota. And I know you've been in the same spot. It's
more
like
coming tomorrow. I think.
Yeah, man, it's fucking been crazy. But I'm like, if it clears up enough where I go, all right, I got a day and I can make it there and back, I'm going to come out. So just a heads up, I'll let you know.
That'd be awesome,
but
man.
I was like, because it's just, the Minnesota stuff, and I can't speak for everybody. It's great, and the retro gaming community in Minnesota is phenomenal. But I do feel like there's just like every time I go to a store, it's like, oh, this was fun to be here, but like I'll pay a premium, but like not that premium. Like I can go to eBay.
Yeah. Well, and game stores are weird, right? Because it's like what I was talking about with GameStop earlier. Like you want to go to a game store that has a good experience for you, and so like you want to go there and you want people to greet you and talk to you and be nice to you and stuff. And so, but what's weird about retro game collectors is they'll go to every store, even if it sucks. Like they'll still go to your store. They may not go first, but they'll go to your store because they're game hunters. They're going to go anywhere they think they can find a good deal. And I'll tell you, you hit it right in the head too. I have never opened a second store for that exact reason. Is I don't want to spread myself too thin. Like I always told myself, I'd rather have one awesome store than two mediocre stores. And there's other companies like in this area that like one guy's expanded out to like 5 stores across like a 60-mile radius. I'm like, geez, man, like this dude's just suffocating me. But we're totally different customers and totally different experiences. And people go there and
why would somebody want to go? Like I've got to go to. I would rather just drove 15 minutes. Because now if they don't have it at the first store I go to, then I got to drive to the next store, the next store, the next store. And maybe it's just me, but I don't like to call. Like part of the collecting for me is just going. Like I'm not going to call. I'm not going to call you. That defeat, like that's not fun. I'm going to show up and be like, hey.
You want to. And on a related note to that, this is something I think is a huge, huge misstep. And a lot of used game stores do this. I think selling your stuff online is a huge misstep. And I only say that because as much as it would be nice, like I could easily sell everything instantly online. You need to have it in the store for people to see it and people like you to walk in and see things they've never seen before. And like, you need that. That's really what the collector wants. Most collectors don't just go on eBay and buy everything they want. I mean, they usually walk into a store and they'll pick one of 5 things they want at your store.
I'll be honest. Sometimes I don't even have a target when I will go shopping. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm going to, and this is, I think where your point is well taken, is where I'm just like, I'm going to go shop for video games today. And I go, not really with an intent. I mean, I might have some things in the collection that go, man, it would be sweet to, scoop a Tournament Fighters on NES or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
But you walk in and go, I know every time I go to this store that they always got something new. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm not going to call them and ask. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to see what's there, and I'm probably going to walk out with something. But I'm not going to do that on eBay. I'm not going to go to eBay and be like, oh, does there a Demon Soul? Like, I could have gotten Demon Souls on eBay for the last 3 months, but I didn't want that. I wanted to go buy Demon Souls. And yeah, it's a PS3 game, but I wanted the black label. I wanted it complete, and I fucking found it at a GameStop, ironically, but like that was where I was coming from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's most collectors' mentality that I run into. And maybe that's just because those are the customers that come into my store. Like, I'm sure there's game collectors that go on eBay, and I find myself having to go on eBay a lot because I want Mint in Box. And so it's like Mint in Box NES does come through the store every now and then. Not super commonly, though. So, enough where if I really want, like, I'm getting very close to completing my NES collection, not getting every game, but just getting every game I want.
Yep.
And so there's like, I think 3 titles I need or something. And I check eBay every day and they're just ones I can never find in mint condition. And it sucks. But I agree. Like, I think most people want to come in and see what you have. And I actually heard, I don't really watch it a lot because I'm not a big fan of Pat the NES Punk, but his
never mind.
his CU,
I'm not going to go down that road.
We'll save it for another podcast. He hits that arrogance of collecting I don't like. But so the CU podcast that he does with Ian, who runs the game store. So he actually he said something that really hit home to me and like something I really understood. And he talks about you have to get in that cycle of buying and selling. And when you first open, people aren't bringing you stuff. And, you have to have enough inventory to sell stuff, but to maintain. And then you have to be able to have cool stuff in so that people want to bring you their cool stuff because they see it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I haven't had a game for 6 months. Someone will trade in like a Chrono Trigger. And then someone will say, oh, you guys are buying, oh, I have a Chrono Trigger. How much would I get for it? And I get another one. Like it happens so frequently. It's crazy.
No kidding.
And
okay.
All the time people see something and they're like, oh, I have that. That's worth money. And you're like, yes, dude, please. And I'll pay you up big time. But then you get in the cycle of, people like I just call it the cycle, but it's the cycle of we buy, like, at the end of the night, I look at my reports. In any given day, I'll buy 106 pieces for X amount of dollars, and I'll sell 100 to 150 pieces for X amount of dollars. And that's the system at work because my inventory is staying level, but I'm making money on the stuff I'm selling. And so it's like, and so you have to get in that. That's not something that happens very easily. Like, it takes time to build up that perfect scenario, and you have to tweak like what your buy percentage is based on how much inventory you're getting compared to the other and whatnot. But and so he said that, and that really resonated with me. Like, he understood that there's like the cycle, and when you sell stuff online, you're kicking out of your market. So like, say I sell something online, it goes to someone in California, I'll never see that game again.
Yep.
But if somebody locally buys it and he plays it for 6 months, then goes, you know what, I'm not collecting Sega CD anymore. I'm just going for a complete original Xbox collection. Like, okay, trade in all your Sega CD stuff and we'll get you a complete Xbox collection, And
yeah, that makes so much sense. I never thought about it that way.
And so many places brag about that. They're like, and I actually get a lot of flack too. Like, people will message us from Chicago and be like, do you ship? I'm like, no, we don't sell anything online. Sorry. And they're like, well, it's really stupid. I'm like, sorry
that you're angry.
Sorry, man.
Sorry
I know
that you can't drive 5 hours. What is it?
Yeah.
What is it? 2 hours from Chicago?
3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. It's nothing. I drive down to Chicago all the time. It's nothing. So yeah, and that's part of that cycle. But and then people will brag about that though. They'll brag about like, oh, we got this rare game in and we sold it really fast online. I'm like, well, if you sell it in the store for the same price, you're making more money because you're not paying your eBay and PayPal fees. Plus, even if it sits in your store for a month, that's 1 month of people coming in and getting to see it. Like, when we had that complete in box Samson at like 2,700 or whatever, like, we put a Facebook post about it blew up, and then we had everybody who came into our store in that monthly cycle saw that game before it sold.
Well, and it wasn't even that though, but I don't know if you have the numbers on this, but they also they maybe walked out with something else.
Exactly.
Like, oh shit, here's a Road Rash for $20. I haven't played Road Rash for a while. I'm going to grab that. You know what I mean?
Well, and everybody would come in and say, what's the story with Little Samson? I would say, here's the story. I even printed off like a little sheet that described when it came out, why it's rare, stuff like that. Just almost like a museum, like a little plaque, And it was cool. I actually thought it was going to be there longer, or I probably wouldn't have printed it off. But, it's, and so I would talk to people about it, spark a great conversation. I was excited to talk about it. They were excited to hear about it. And then, they shopped around, and who knows what they bought just because of me getting that game in, even though they didn't.
And then you still made margins on the game. More.
Yeah.
Right. And the Spider-Man, the Spider-Man.
The Web of Fire. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we sold that, and then we had I had a TurboGrafx game called Legend of Hero Tanma, so working designs game, complete in box, $1,500. It's wild, but they always sell.
Yeah,
I could have sold it online, but
well, and and that's the thing with those games, right? Where I don't want to. That's the kind of stuff that I would actually also be willing to pay a premium for, also knowing that the margins are going to be better for the person selling it than just going to eBay. Like, eBay's margin or eBay's seller fees plus PayPal now, like you're losing 11 to 13% off the top.
Yep.
Which is just
right away.
Which is just trash, right? So eBay is already in a lot of ways a little inflated, but like if I can go to a store and get something even above an eBay price, but actually be able to go look at it, have the shopping experience, interact with the people that own the store, and support that, like I appreciate that, and like I will pay for that. I'll drive for that. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of other people will too, but just and I'm going to say this, and I certainly don't think it's your model specifically, but like there's a part of me that if I owned a store and somebody called and said they're 3.5 hours away and they're like, can you ship this to me? I'm like, you don't want this game. Like, you don't want this game. Get out of here with that. Drive up here and see it, man. Yeah,
like you want the diehard to kind of get it, Yeah.
Obviously, in business, you're not going to pick and choose to that extent. But I'm just like, come on, man.
Right. But if that same person that said, "I'll tell you what, I'll be there Saturday. Can you hold it for a week?" I'd do that. I'd put a hold on that for a week to see if that guy would buy it.
Yeah, for sure.
Or a gal would come up and buy it. So yeah, but and then the other point about what you're saying though, and it's really cool that you would do that. And a lot of people are willing to do that, and they're willing to pay a premium and a certain percentage over eBay. That also kind of frustrates me though too, because you shouldn't have to. Like I've been a big time eBay guy. So I look at it and say, look, if I can get this on eBay in this condition, obviously specified in this condition, if it's worth 150 on eBay, I don't want to sell it for more than 150 because in my head, I could just go buy it on eBay. So why would I pay 160 or 170? And obviously there's it's a small business and helping them out. And I do appreciate that. But I also feel like responsible to my customers. Like we try not to do that. And obviously prices fluctuate, like we'll put a game out at 150 and then if it doesn't sell for a month or two, sometimes it dips down to 130 and then it's up to 150 and then down to 120 and then up to 160. Like they fluctuate, depending on when one sells in whatever condition. But so I look at that and I say, yeah, we don't change our prices every time we see it on eBay at a different price. But if someone came up to me and said, hey, this game's 150, I can get one right now on eBay for 120, I'd mark it down on the spot. Like that's our policy.
Absolutely. And I think, but that's all, and that's awesome. And like, I guess I was speaking, I'm probably, an edge case in those scenarios because it is nice just to say like not the quote unquote collector, but a lot of people running in are going to go, well, why the hell am I going to give you 10% more when I can get it on eBay? Right. So you certainly don't want to price yourself out of that market,
Well, and it's all about perception, right? Perception is reality. And so if you're perceived to always be 10% above eBay, then that's people, even when you're not, people think you are. And like there was a store in town here. I don't know if they still do this, but I used to work with the owner's son at GameStop. And he told me one time, because he always asks me, he's like, how do you get so much rare stuff in, man? Come on, like where do you find all this stuff? Are you going on eBay and buying this stuff? I'm like, of course not. Like I can't buy something on eBay and sell it to my store. Who the hell makes money doing that? But he told me what they do is they put it at 20% above eBay prices because they want it to sit on the shelf for a while so that people know they have it. And I'm like, but people aren't just knowing you have it. People are knowing you have it at a crazy price. So you're not doing yourself any favors, man. Like all you're doing is making yourself look like you're overpriced. And I say this in a I have that same way on myself.
I have that same perception. I'm not going to name it. I have that same perception of one store in the metro area that I know has shit that I want. And I'm like, I'm not going because I know that they're so much higher than I'm even willing to pay. I'm like, well, I know you got it, but now I also know eBay has it, right?
And they'll never change your perception. Like, they'll never be able to change that unless something miraculous happens where you go there and get really lucky or something, like, and find something misstickered, But it's just a weird but that was like the Wild West of game stores circa 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago when collecting, like when a lot of the stuff was dirt cheap and game stores were just running on normal profit margins of whatever was out at that time. So your PS2 and PS3, Now it's like with the rare game like boom, which came, I mean, realistically, right about when I opened, it was really ramping up. So 2010, 2011. And it starts really ramping up. And then, you've got stores who didn't know how to deal with that and didn't know how to deal with pricing. And sometimes you go to a store and they'd have Mario 3 for $10 extra because it's a Mario game. Just because they know it'll sell. And I remember a friend of mine, he has a game store too. And me and him actually had a little bit of a conflict on this. Like we're good friends. And like, we both are, like responsible business owners, but he told me like Mario Kart 64 over the summer took a real dip. Like it went down to like $25 for Mario Kart 64. And I think we were used to having it at 35 or 40. And I remember he had a conversation with me where he said, he's like, I can't see dropping the price, man. He's like, this thing's going to sell instantly. Like at $35, like I don't need to mark it down. And I was like, well, I don't need to either, but like I have a system, baby, and that system is, we price it according to what it sells for online. And I don't know, it's weird. So then people, I think, get wrapped up in that though. And then they're like, well, yeah, Mario Kart will sell for that, but okay, Mario Party will too. And so will Smash. And then all of a sudden half your games are overpriced because it's that name brand. And in Madison, there's a store. I used to go to Madison Game Hunting. There's a store down here called Pre-Played. And like I'm selling, in my little hole in the wall in my corner of Wisconsin, I'm selling, Ocarina of Time for $24.99, and they've got it for $49.99. Oh yeah, like what the hell is this? Like it's never been $50 a loose cart ever.
That's what. Well, don't be surprised. I mean, I don't know.
I should say around me.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what targets you're gonna see in Minnesota. I haven't hit up all the stores, but yeah, Ocarina is generally around $39 to $49 from what I've seen at the stores in Minnesota. Yeah. God, what was I looking at a couple weeks ago? I was just peeping the N64 games and just remembering, like, just going like, all of these are just like a step too far for me. And like, that's the thing though. And you know what? A lot of this actually, and this is going to be, maybe this isn't completely apples to apples here, but like, that's how I feel about a lot of the Nintendo pricing nowadays. The current Nintendo pricing, where I'm just like, that $60 is just a step too far for me to feel good about it. And like, I know people haven't played a lot of the games, but I go, oh, another Mario Tennis. Yeah, $60. That's just a step too far for me. And it's not that like I can't afford it or whatever. It's just like, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally. It's like original games like Mario Odyssey and like Octopath Traveler. I look at that and I go, yeah, I'm cool with that. But when I see essentially the ports, and a remake, even Mario Kart 8 was a stretch for me, but it was Mario Kart,
Yeah, I still felt like that should have been 50 at the most. But I was like, it's only $10. I get it, but I'm just like, guys.
Well, it reminds me of, I think it was Last of Us when it came out on PS4, and The Last of Us Remastered came out, and I think it was $49.99. And I remember thinking like, well, that's kind of, I mean, I already played it on PS3, so I'm not going to buy it again, but it's pretty cool that it's not full price. Now, obviously that was like their sweet spot. They were like, well, if it's not, we can say it's a port, we won't get blasted for it because it's not full price. Even though 50 is still, I think, high for that game. Saying it, I mean, I would play it again because I love that game. I mean, it was fantastic, but that kind of goes to our whole point of ports only suck when it's a game you don't want ported.
Well, so right, exactly. But I think The Last of Us, though, I think that was actually announced. This may have been Uncharted, so I don't know if this will jog your memory. I think Last of Us was announced at $60, and there was a bunch of pre-orders at $60, and then everybody got angry about it, and then they dropped it to 50 and had to do a bunch of refunds.
I'd have to look into that. I wonder.
I think that was Last of Us, but it may have been the Uncharted trilogy. But like even that, and like I know it's only one system back, but like even the Uncharted trilogy, even at $60, you're going like, I'm getting 3 enhanced games at $60, and I get it. It's different strokes for different folks. Like I'm not, every time I bring up one of the $60 Nintendo things, it's not always just specific to that game. It's just like, how does Nintendo get away with it across the board for every game, good or bad? Every game. It could be a Mario Tennis game. The only game that they've released at $40 is Captain Toad. But like even like Donkey Kong, when they re-released Tropical Freeze at $60 and then like delisted it from the Wii U store where it was 20, I was just like, isn't like, I don't care. I have the game. But is no one else upset about this?
Yeah, well, and we touched upon it a little bit on Twitter, but it was way too short to talk about, you know. But basically, Nintendo wants to keep the perceived value of their products high.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their mentality is, if we put a Mario game out, like if we put Mario Kart 8 out at $20, people think it's a budget game, not a full-fledged release. And you're like, well, okay. And they think they're devaluing their product by releasing it at a discounted price. But I don't feel that way about Resident Evil 4, 5, 6 for $20 and Resident Evil Origins for $20 on PS4. You know, no. I don't feel that way about Okami for $20. I mean, I don't feel that way about Onimusha remake or a Onimusha port for $20. Like, I don't think that devalues
the Yakuza series at $29.90. I thought, no, I don't either. But like, and I get Nintendo where they're coming from, and I look, they have great characters and great franchises. And just personally, and this is the thing that I always need to tell people.
Yeah, my opinion.
I understand why other people would spend the money. Personally, though, I just can't do it any longer. I'm not willing to. It depends on the game. Like, I'd go buy Mario Tennis today if it was $39, but it's not. It's $60. I'm not spending $60 on a Mario Tennis game that I know isn't great, but I love Mario Tennis. But I'm not spending $60 on it.
And it's amazing their fans. I mean, to build a fan base that will put up with all of your shortcomings, and to not just put up with them, but to stick up for you. I mean, that's Apple levels of like customer loyalty. It is. You can't buy that kind of loyalty, you know, and it's built it over the years. I mean, rightfully so, you know, with the franchise that were great. You know, my two managers, neither one of them bought a Switch, and I buy pretty much everything because I want to play everything game related. And I hate handhelds for the most part. Like, I just never play handhelds, and the 3DS in particular, I hate as hardware. I think it's just one of the worst design pieces of hardware in the world. But it has good games on it. I never play handhelds. So when the Switch came out, I was like, finally, a Nintendo system where they're going to release everything that I want to play, their Pokemon games, their everything. And I could plug in my TV and sit back on my couch. Like, that's what I've always wanted, you know? And so I was really happy about the Switch, and I get it. But neither one of my guys is going to buy a Switch. And it's a running joke now that, like, you know, I'll walk in and they'll be at the register and be like, hey, did you hear the big news? And he'll say something like, you know, I'm just pick a random game off the top of my head, be like, Sonic 2 is coming to the Switch. And that's like the big joke, is that everything's coming to the Switch, you know, and everything's getting ported. And so they refuse to buy it. And I'll show them a game. Like one of the guys, huge RPG guy, I'm like, you got to play Octopath, man. It's really fun in the beginning. And it kind of trails off, but that's whatever.
Different conversation. But
yeah, I'm like, you know, you got to play it. And he goes, it looks really awesome, but I hate the Switch. I hate Nintendo. Like, they lost those guys as fans during the Wii and Wii U era. And I'm just surprised that they didn't average more fans during the Wii and Wii U era.
That's weird to me, because I love the Wii and the Wii U, and I actually love the Switch, despite my larger conversations. I'm a huge Nintendo fan. I love a lot of the things that they're doing, and some of the times it's just a little bit of hyperbole. Not everything is a port. It's funny because I actually think of the Switch. I thought about this the other day. I think the Switch is kind of in line with really what you were seeing as far as support from the SNES goes, right? Maybe not as many new IP and new property, but you're getting like a really good representation for JRPGs. You're getting a nice steady stream of Nintendo stuff. I think they're doing a lot of really good things on the Switch that we didn't see on the N64, because that was kind of dead in the water. We didn't see it on the GameCube. The Wii had a lot of awesome things. And it was hugely popular, but it was also kind of a cesspool dumping ground for a lot of things. I think the Wii U actually had a lot of awesome Nintendo first party video games that, and I still stand by this, and I could be completely off base, but I just think groupthink, along with Nintendo's marketing, but I think there was just a general groupthink that this thing was trash, and I've got a pile of games that were Nintendo exclusives that I loved on the Wii U, and that's where it kind of felt the Switch fell down for me, was because I was like, I played a lot of these, and so
right. Well, and that's always the trap you fall into, though, is you know, like, oh, the system's not selling. Okay, well, then people aren't going to go out of their way to make games for it, and then people aren't buying the system because there's no games for it. Like, once you slide into that, like, I don't know how the PlayStation 3 pulled out of it. I mean, I know they put up a lot of Sony published great exclusives. Like, they went out of their way to get games, but my goodness, like, it's hard to recover from a year of barren releases. And the PS3 was like barren. I remember how tough it was. Like, I remember downloading like stuff off the PlayStation Store like Pain and Last Guy and these really early indies because there was nothing.
There was nothing there. I mean, I remember my buddy took it home with Resistance 1 and Ridge Racer, and he had a really nice like DLP TV at the time and could do Component. And everybody, the narrative at the time was, well, PS3 is not worth it if you can't do Component or HDMI, whatever. And we started playing Resistance 1 and then Ridge Racer. I was like, this is not great.
Oh man, that was not their best offering.
But I do love Resistance 1. It actually turned into one of my more favorite PS3 games. But like the fact that they were able to, at least worldwide, hit that 70 million mark along with the Xbox 360, that was incredible. But Uncharted, The Last of Us, just that focus on single player, I think went a long way for Sony towards the end there, right? It became that single player box where you still got, you got your Call of Duties and stuff, but I think that went a long way. Plus they were super cheap, right? Eventually, I guess, again, I don't have numbers, but eventually you go, well, if I have an Xbox 360 and I can get a PS3 for $149, why not?
Yeah, and I think, I want to say when they hit like the $199 range for new ones, it was a Blu-ray player that was cheaper than Blu-ray players were. Yep. And so then you got to the point where like, well, why wouldn't you just buy a PS3 instead of a Blu-ray player? And Blu-ray was actually doing really well, and like it had won the format war or whatever. And so, you had like people were able to say, well, I can get this for the same price as a regular Blu-ray player and I can play games on. And you're right. It was all about the games. And that was the misstep that Sony made in the beginning. They were like, it's an all-in-one machine. It's a media center for everything you want to do, and it plays games. And then Xbox did the same. Microsoft did the same thing. They did the same thing. I was like, it's crazy. What are you doing? I think that they think, to be honest, I'm guessing that they thought that Sony was probably like a little early. And so they said, okay, maybe Sony was early on that, but we're going to do it too. I got to be honest, up until probably, I don't know, month and a half ago, I was still running my antenna cable because I cut the cord, but I was still running the antenna cable through my Xbox because I just wanted to be able to turn on the Xbox, and it had the recording feature because I had the hard drive hooked up to it. And then I finally was like, all right, this is stupid, and hooked my antenna straight to the TV. But like, I still use that, but they were, people don't want that. Yeah, it is. People want their game system to have media features. They don't want a media center that has game features. No, exactly. And I think that's seemingly what's been proven over the years. And watching Microsoft fall into that trap, I almost wonder. I really don't think they were prepared for the PlayStation 4 to come out when it did. I think they pushed up their launch. I think they thought they had another year. I don't know why, but like that I always feel like the Xbox Ones felt so rushed. Yep. And then with all the backfire on the no used games things and like the registering games thing, that they had to fix. And you could tell that when they designed that UI, like to that hardware and that software to its core was built around that always online feature. Yep. And so when they started stripping it out, like you could tell that was like they were scrambling. And they still haven't been able to fully mitigate that. Like it still feels that way in a lot of ways. Right. And when you first hook up the Xbox, you have to be hooked up online. You have to sign into Xbox Live. Even if like that's an issue we run into. We have a college right next to us, and the college internet's just terrible because it's like dorm internet. And people will come in and be like, oh yeah, I bought this and I can't use it. So we'll hook it up to our Wi-Fi, get them set up with the system, get all working so they can go in and play it without being online. It's so weird. That's hilarious. Oh man. It's wild. But anyway, I could go down the rabbit hole of that, talking about that all day too. But just it was a good recovery though, and I like that. Like that's what we should be celebrating, moments like that. Even Microsoft's recovery here, like they didn't give up on it. Someone in Microsoft could have been like, you know what, the Xbox division still hasn't been profitable. Let's just get rid of it. But they didn't. They're sticking to their guns. Like they see the potential of gaming in the future. Like they stuck with it, and that's what we should be celebrating. Both Sony's come back with the PS, because when the PS4 launched, they listened to everything that everyone complained about with PS3. Easier for developers, the sharing, the social media stuff. Like they built that machine like it was everything you'd want right out of the box. And it was a game box, right? Like first and foremost, it was a game box. It had media features, like you said, but like when you open that thing up and plugged it in, you're like, this is made for playing games. I love to play games. This is incredible.
right?
Yep. And really, you could argue that the PS4's launch lineup sucked ass too.
It wasn't
like
great.
It was not strong. Like Killzone is Killzone. It's fine. It wasn't a bad game or anything, but it was pretty light. And I still say my favorite launch title of this generation was Dead Rising 3 on the Xbox One. And I hate the Xbox One, but that was still the best game I played like of the launch of this console generation. And it took PS4 like the end of that first year to really have something that was like a must-have title.
Yeah, well, I think you could technically maybe say the same for both. For me, it was just getting Forza 5 at the time. Yeah. I was like, I'm a racing guy. I love that. You know, that's going to justify it for me. But like, if you weren't a racing guy, you know, like maybe the DR3 or something like that could do it. But yeah, that was my main point. I was like, I'll get it for Forza, but
yep. But man, that feels like a lifetime ago. We're already on the cusp of new consoles.
Yeah, we are. It's been fun. Well, hey, this went fast, man. We're clipping 2 hours. We'll have
2 hours.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. Didn't even take a break, but we'll have to do it again sometime. I don't want to cut it off here, but I mean, you know. 2 hours went by.
Anytime, man. It was a blast, and like these sort of conversations, as news stories come up that really get stuck in our craw, we'll schedule another one because it was a blast, man. It was fun chatting with you, and at any time too. I mean, I'm always happy to chat about the business side of my store too, and just kind of like, you know, how we start. Anything you want, man. I love it, but I love the business and kind of like I say, man. My motto is always like be better, and I want to educate people, and I want, you know, I want players people that play video games, I want them to like listen to something like this and say like, yes, I want to learn more. Like I want to know more. And even if it's in an arrogant way, like I want to know more than that guy, like that's cool. Just learn more, you know, like open your mind and like learn everything. No, learn more, man. That's it.
Well, and the industry and just people will be better off for it. And I don't like, look, we're not, you know, solving the world's problems here talking about video games, but certainly within the hobby, like, I want the hobby to be better. And like, you know, I just feel like these conversations go a long way to, you know, even if I'm like, hell, if I say something that isn't right, call me out on it, everybody. But like, I just think it's a better conversation to actually talk about these things than just run with a headline and just continue to just jump down like that negative ass rabbit hole, you know? Yep.
Spark the conversation. And that's, I'm with it. And honestly, there'll be times I think too, when we challenge something that we perceive as like, a net positive, and I'll be like, well, I don't actually think that's a positive, you know, like, or why are we celebrating this when it's like, that's what companies do, you know, like something that too, but that's, you know, so we'll be here fighting the good fight, I guess, against strange game journalist headlines.
Yeah, I suppose it's as reductive as that kind of sounds. Sometimes that's what it boils down to. But well, right on. Well, let's close out this episode. But man, it's been a ton of fun. It's been
a ride, man. I'm glad it worked out too, because this was the only day for this couple hours I had free. So
yeah,
it worked out perfect.
I appreciate it. So well, right on. We'll call it a show until next time. But super appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.